The auctioneer's voice cracked like a whip through the stifling air of the Istanbul bazaar. "Sold to the lady in black for 9 copper coins." The crowd murmured, eyes shifting from the massive figure chained on the block to the veiled woman who had just claimed him. He towered over the handlers, even slumped and bandaged, his frame broad as an ancient oak, wounds hidden beneath rags that whispered of a recent betrayal. Countess Elena Voss, her silk gloves still warm from the bid, stepped forward without flinching. Whispers rippled, a European noblewoman in the heart of the slave market, buying what others deemed worthless refuse. The giant's head lifted slowly, his piercing blue eyes, uncommon in these parts, meeting hers for a split second. In that gaze, she saw not defeat, but a storm brewing. Handlers unchained him roughly, prodding him toward her carriage with iron-tipped sticks. He moved like a shadow of thunder, each step deliberate despite the limp. If you're gripped by this tale already, hit that subscribe button, share with a friend who loves a good mystery, and drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from today. Elena's carriage rattled through the labyrinthine streets of Pera, the European quarter where her modest villa clung to the hillside overlooking the Bosphorus. She had come to Istanbul 2 years prior, widowed and stripped of her Austrian estates by scheming relatives, seeking fortune in the East's shadowy trades. Silk, spices, anything to rebuild. But this purchase? Pure instinct. The auctioneer had paraded him as damaged goods, ribs cracked from some skirmish, a gash across his shoulder that wept clear fluid through the wrappings. No one bid higher than a few paras, who wanted a slave too broken for labor, too large for subtlety. Inside the villa's courtyard, under torchlight that danced like hesitant flames, Eleanor oversaw his transfer. Servants, loyal Circassians she'd freed years back, gasped at his size. He stood nearly 7 feet, muscles corded like ship's ropes beneath pale skin scarred from battles long past. "Goran," she said softly, testing the name the auctioneer had barked. No response. He collapsed onto a stone bench as ordered, breath ragged. She knelt, peeling back the rags with steady hands. The shoulder wound pulsed faintly, edges inflamed but clean, no festering rot. Deeper marks crisscrossed his back, old whip scars layered over fresher burns. Someone had wanted him gone, not just subdued. "Why?" she murmured, more to herself. Goran's eyes flicked to her, then away. Trust did not come cheap in these markets. Elena signaled for water and linen. Her maid, Zara, brought a basin, her face tight with unease. "Highness, he's no field hand. Those eyes, they belong to a fighter." Elena nodded, tracing the newest mark, a precise slice near the jugular, hastily stitched. Amateur work, panicked. Professionals left no survivors. As she cleaned it, Goran's hand twitched, massive gers curling. He could crush her skull without effort. Yet he didn't. Night deepened. Elena retired to her study, maps of trade routes spread before her. The giant slave gnawed at her thoughts. 9 coins for a man who moved like a predator, feigning weakness. Rumors from the bazaar echoed. He'd arrived weeks ago, captured from a raiding party up north, perhaps Georgian hills or Russian steppes. But the handlers spoke of an incident in the holding pens. 2 guards vanished, whispers of a blade in the dark. She poured Reiki, the anise burn sharpening her focus. Who pays to silence a slave? Not owners. They whipped. This smelled of secrets worth killing for. By dawn, Goran stirred in the stables where she'd housed him, too grand for chains indoors, yet watched. Elena approached with bread and olives. He devoured silently, gaze never leaving her face. "You speak?" she asked in Turkish, then German. A rumble escaped him, Russian-inflected words gravelly. Enough. Progress. She sat across, skirts pooling like spilled ink. "Who marked you so?" His jaw tightened. "Men who fear giants." Evasive. But his eyes betrayed calculation, weighing her as she weighed him. Days blurred into a tense rhythm. Elena's routines shifted around him. Mornings, she oversaw shipments of Persian rugs. Afternoons, Goran labored lightly, hauling crates his size alone, strength returning with unnatural speed. Servants whispered of omens. His shadow swallowed doorways. Yet he obeyed, a colossus on a leash of curiosity. One evening, as thunder rolled over the strait, she found him tracing old scars by lantern light. "This one," he said, pointing to the throat gash, came from a blade meant to end questions. Her pulse quickened. Questions about what? He hesitated, voice dropping. "A cargo, hidden in the Black Sea holds. Men in coats paid for my capture, not for work, but to bury it." Eleanor leaned in, the air thick. E-coats, nobles, perhaps envoys. Her mind raced to her own losses back home. Estates seized by Baron Klaus von Richter, her late husband's cousin, who claimed debts unpaid. Von Richter traded with the port, shadows in ledgers. Coincidence? Goran's gaze hardened. "They thought me dead already, but I walked from the wreck." Tension coiled tighter. Elena dismissed the servants early that night, bolting doors herself. Sleep evaded her. Footsteps echoed faintly outside. City cats or watchers? Goran's words replayed, "A cargo. What smuggling lord sends assassins for a witness?" She slipped to the window, scanning the mist-shrouded alley. Nothing, but the giant's presence now felt like both shield and enigma. Had she brought salvation or a storm cloud? Weeks passed. Goran grew stronger, his limp fading. Elena tested him. Deliveries to wary merchants who paled at his shadow. He returned unerringly, pouches intact. Loyalty or waiting? One market trip, a vendor hissed as they passed. Titan's bane, and spat. Goran stiffened but walked on. Back home, Eleanor confronted him. "Enemies follow you here." He nodded once. The blade was silver-handled, crest of a wolf. Wolf, von Richter's sigil, a silver lupine on black. Her blood chilled. The Baron, entangled in Ottoman intrigues, erasing loose ends from a sea venture gone awry. She paced her study, piecing fragments. Von Richter's last letter, months old, warnings to stay away from eastern ports. Goran's capture aligned, Black Sea raids, whispers of illicit arms or vanished officials. The giant had seen too much, faces, holds stuffed with forbidden crates. 9 coins bought her a key to vengeance or a noose. That night, as rain lashed the tiles, a knock shattered the quiet. Zara burst in, face ashen. "Highness, a man at the gate, European, insists on seeing the new slave." Elena glanced to Goran, stationed like a sentinel by the hearth. His fists clenched, eyes gleaming with recognition's edge. The door creaked open below, voices rising. Friend? Foe? The air hummed with unspoken peril. Footsteps echoed up the stone stairs, deliberate and unhurried, each one slicing through the silence like a blade through silk. Goran shifted his massive frame, the chain still dangling from his wrists, clinking softly against the iron grate. He pressed against the wall, muscles coiled, ready to unleash the fury that had felled so many before. The Countess, Lady Isolde, froze midway across the room, her hand tightening on the candelabrum. Shadows danced wildly as the flame flickered, casting elongated figures that twisted like conspirators. The voices sharpened into words, laced with authority. "Search every corner. He cannot have vanished into ether." A man's timbre, deep and commanding, the kind that brooked no defiance. Goran's breath caught. That voice, he knew it from fevered dreams, from the clash of steel and the sting of betrayal on a rain-slicked battlefield far to the east. Not just any pursuer. Duke Victor, his former lord, the one whose ambition had forged Goran into a weapon, then discarded him like a dulled edge. Isolde's eyes darted to Goran, a silent command passing between them. "Hide." She gestured subtly toward the alcove behind the heavy tapestry depicting ancient hunts. He moved like a shadow himself, despite his size, slipping behind the woven scene of stags fleeing hounds. The fabric settled just as the door above burst open. Two guards stormed in first, lanterns swinging, their boots thudding against the rushes. Duke Victor followed, his cloak swirling, embroidered with the silver falcon of his house. Tall, angular, with a scar tracing his jawline like a map of old grudges. "Where is the wench who bought my property?" Victor's gaze swept the chamber, lingering on the hearth's dying embers. Isolde stepped forward, chin lifted, her gown whispering against the floor. "This is my home, Duke. Your property? I see only guests under my roof." He laughed, a low rumble that held no mirth. "Guests? That brute you snatched from the auction block for a pittance. He's mine by right of blood oath. Hand him over, and perhaps I'll forget this insolence." His eyes narrowed, scanning the room as if sensing the giant's presence. One guard prodded the bed with his sword hilt, another yanked open the wardrobe. Isolde's pulse thrummed visibly at her throat, but her voice remained steady. "Insolence? I paid fair coin, 9 coppers to be precise. The slaver's relinquished claim." Victor's hand shot out, seizing her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but firm, a reminder of power's weight. "Fair? You meddle in matters beyond your station, Countess. That giant served me in the wars against the border raiders. He turned on us, cowardice or conspiracy, I care not which. I want him back to face justice." Goran tensed behind the tapestry, turned on us, lies woven tighter than the threads concealing him. He remembered the night vividly, the Duke's tent aglow with maps, whispers of a poisoned well to claim victory. Goran had refused, challenged the order. Steel had answered, allies turning blades on him in the chaos. Wounded, hunted, sold into chains. Victor had branded him traitor to cover his own dark designs. Isolde twisted free with practiced grace. Justice? From a man who discards lives like spent arrows, leave my halls or summon the magistrate. The Duke's face hardened, a storm brewing. He signaled his men. They tore at the furnishings, overturning the table with a crash that shook the rafters. One guard ripped the tapestry aside. Goran exploded forward. His chained fists swung in a wide arc, catching the first man across the chest. The guard flew backward, crumpling against the wall with a gasp. The second lunged, sword raised, but Goran caught his arm mid-strike, twisting until the weapon clattered free. Victor drew his own blade, eyes blazing. "There you are, beast! Come quietly, or—" Isolde hurled the candelabrum. Wax and flame scattered, forcing Victor to dodge. Chaos erupted. Goran charged, a living avalanche, slamming into the Duke. They grappled, massive forms colliding, the floor groaning under their weight. Victor's knife flashed, seeking the old wound on Goran's side. Pain lanced through him, hot and insistent, but he drove his elbow into the Duke's ribs, hearing the crack. "Enough!" Isolde's cry cut through. She had seized a poker from the hearth, brandishing it like a scepter. The guard stirred, groaning, but hesitated at her stance. Victor shoved Goran back, panting, blood dark rivulets staining his sleeve. "This isn't over, Countess. He'll bring ruin to you both." He retreated down the stairs, his men limping after, the door slamming like an curse. Silence descended, broken only by heavy breaths. Goran slumped against the wall, pressing a hand to his reopened gash. Isolde rushed to him, tearing a strip from her underskirt to bind it. "Who is he to you?" she whispered, Gers steady despite the tremor in her voice. "My maker. My betrayer." Goran's words rumbled low. "Duke Victor forged me in the Iron Legion, promised glory, but his victories demanded shadows, acts no honorable man endures. I defied him once. He marked me for erasure." Isolde's brow furrowed. She had bought him on impulse, drawn to the quiet strength in his eyes amid the auction's clamor. A giant among broken men, sold for scraps because his wounds bespoke a story untold. Now that story bled into her world. Why spare him tonight? You could have ended it. Goran met her gaze, the firelight etching lines of weariness on his cragged face. Ending him, solves nothing. His web spans courts and kings. Kill the spider, and the threads still snare you. He glanced at the window, where dawn's first light clawed at the horizon. Riders' hooves faded into the distance. Victor's retreat, but not surrender. Days blurred into a tense vigil. Isolde's manor, perched on the Carpathian foothills, became a fortress of whispers. Servants eyed Goran warily, rumors of the midnight brawl spreading like mist. She unchained him fully, trusting his restraint, and he repaid it by fortifying the gates, his massive hands shaping iron bars with ease. Yet trust was a fragile bloom. At night, Goran paced the battlements, haunted by memories. Victor wasn't just a lord, he was architect of Goran's shattered life, father to the Legion's unbreakable code, until it broke Goran. Isolde probed gently over shared meals. "What shadows did he ask you to cast?" Goran hesitated, then spoke of poisoned supplies left for enemy villages, of ambushes disguised as retreats. I was his hammer, refused to strike the innocent. He called it mercy's folly. Her own past mirrored fragments, widowed young, inheriting a crumbling estate, fighting off suitors who sought her lands more than her hand. Victor had been one years ago, his proposal laced with veiled threats. Tension coiled tighter when a raven arrived, bearing a sealed missive. Isolde broke the wax, her face paling. He petitions the regional council, claims you stole his rightful servant. Trial in 3 days, at the Grand Hall in Brasov. Goran's fists tightened, knuckles whitening. They'll chain me again, display me as trophy. Not if we act first. Isolde's resolve hardened. She had allies, old family ties to merchants who navigated courts like rivers. But Victor held sway, his falcon banners fluttering over half the province. They plotted in hushed tones, gather evidence of his misdeeds, witnesses from the Legion's survivors. Goran named them, 3 men scattered in hidden villages, scarred by the Duke's commands. The journey began under cover of dusk. Isolde rode side-saddle, Goran loping alongside on foot, his strides eating the miles. Forests whispered secrets, branches clawing at moonlight. At the first village, nestled in a valley, they found Luca, once Goran's shield brother. The man cowered in a thatched hut, eyes hollow. Victor's men come for whispers. He erases dissent. Luca spoke haltingly of that fateful night. The Duke's order to taint the water, Goran's stand. I saw it. He saved us from becoming monsters. A sworn affidavit scrawled by candlelight, but as they departed, hoofbeats thundered. Scouts, Victor's hounds. Goran scooped Isolde onto his horse, barreling into the woods. Arrows whistled past, one grazing his shoulder. They lost the pursuers in a ravine, hearts pounding in unison. The second witness, Mira, a healer's widow in the hills, confirmed the pattern. He discards the broken, like my husband after the raid. Her words fueled their fire. Yet doubt gnawed at Goran. Victor had been a father figure once, pulling him from orphanage rags into warrior's steel. Was the betrayal mutual? Had Goran's defiance blinded him to greater threats? Back at the manor, preparations intensified. Isolde coached Goran on courtly speech, softening his gravelly tone. He taught her grips and evasions, his hands gentle on her arms. Proximity bred unspoken bonds, glances lingering, silences charged. But peril loomed. A servant betrayed them, Victor learning of the witnesses. Riders encircled the estate at midnight. Goran stood at the gate, a colossus silhouetted against torches. Yield the giant, Countess, and keep your peace. Victor's voice boomed from the darkness. Isolde climbed the wall, voice carrying. Peace? You've poisoned it long enough, Duke. The council will hear truths, not your fables. A standoff. Then a horn blared from the east. Magistrates' men summoned by Isolde's missives. Victor cursed, wheeling away into the night. Relief washed brief. The trial awaited, a crucible where pasts would clash. If you're gripped by this tale of shadowed loyalties, hit that subscribe button, share with a friend, and drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Your support keeps these stories alive. Dawn broke as they rode for Brasov, the grand hall's spires piercing the sky. Crowds milled, banners snapping in the wind. Victor waited inside, poised like a predator. Goran dismounted, chains metaphorically reforged by fate's hand. The doors swung wide. Truth's arena beckoned. Crowds pressed against the stone walls, their murmurs a rising tide. Victor stood at the arena's heart, broad-shouldered and armored in velvet-trimmed steel, his saber gleaming under the torchlight. Goran stepped through the doors, the chains of his past now invisible bonds of purpose. The Countess watched from the shadowed balcony, her jaws tight on the rail, heart echoing the crowd's hush. Goran towered over the sand, his bandaged frame casting a long shadow, despite the fresh scars hidden beneath rough linen. Victor smirked, circling slowly, eyes locked on the giant's unyielding gaze. "You dare show your face here, brute, after crawling from the pits?" Victor's voice sliced the air, laced with the arrogance of old bloodlines. The Countess, Elena, had pieced it together in the weeks since the auction. 9 cents for a man broken by arrows and blades. Too cheap, even for a slave market rife with desperation. Goran's whispers in the estate's dim library revealed fragments, a raid in the Carpathian hills, where imperial scouts marked him not for capture, but erasure. Victor, her late husband's scheming cousin, had led that band. Not mere theft of labor, but silencing a witness to embezzled fortunes from the crown's war chest. Goran lunged first, a feint that stirred the dust. Victor parried, sparks flying from clashing steel, short, brutal. The giant's reach was his weapon, forcing Victor back step by gasping step. The crowd leaned in, breaths held as sabers whispered threats. Elena's mind raced. Victor's greed had poisoned her family lands, diverting funds meant for serfs into his hidden vaults. Goran knew the ledgers, had hauled crates under moonlight before the ambush. Victor's blade nicked Goran's arm, a thin line of crimson tracing down. The giant didn't flinch. He pressed, footfalls like thunder, driving Victor toward the arena's spiked barrier. "You thought arrows would end me," Goran growled, voice low as grinding stone, "but chains forge stronger steel." Victor laughed, wild now, slashing high. The crowd gasped. Elena gripped harder, seeing the flicker of fear in her cousin's eyes, the man who had whispered lies to steal her title after her husband's sudden illness. If you're gripped by this tale of shadowed betrayals, hit that subscribe button, share with a friend, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your stories fuel the next twist. Sweat beaded Victor's brow. He feinted left, then struck low, but Goran anticipated, blocking with a forearm that could splinter oak. The impact reverberated, Victor's saber trembling in his grip. Memories flooded Goran. The night of the raid, arrows whistling from Victor's hidden archers, meant to claim not just his life, but the proof of pilfered gold sewn into his tunic. Eleanor had found those scraps, faded maps leading to buried caches that could reclaim her estate. Victor stumbled, sand shifting under his boots. "She's bewitched you, hasn't she? A noble with a beast?" His words were bait, meant to unbalance. Goran ignored it, sweeping his blade in a wide arc that forced Victor to dive. The crowd roared, a beast unleashed. Elena rose slightly, her silk gown whispering against stone. She had bought Goran not from pity, but calculation. His survival was her key to unraveling Victor's web. Yet in nursing his wounds, sharing quiet evenings by the fire, something deeper had stirred. Trust, rare as Carpathian gold. The duel tightened. Victor's strikes grew frantic, each clash echoing off walls like accusations. Goran's patience wore him down, a mountain-eroding haste. A owl twist, Goran hooked Victor's saber, yanking it free. It spun into the dust, hilt glinting mockingly. Victor froze, hands raised, breath ragged. The crowd fell silent. Guards approached, but Elena signaled them back. This truth needed her voice. She descended the balcony stairs, skirts trailing like judgment's veil. Victor spun toward her, face paling. Elena, cousin, mercy, family blood. Goran stepped aside, saber lowered, his role as champion complete. Elena stopped paces away, eyes cold as mountain streams. Family. You bled ours dry, Victor. The ledgers Goran carried, proof of your diversions from the crown, the raid to silence him, my husband's illness, laced with your poison from the east. Victor's defiance cracked. He glanced at the crowd, nobles whispering, merchants nodding. They knew the rumors. Lies from a slave's tongue. But Elena drew a folded parchment from her sleeve, the auction day's map, inked with Victor's own hand. Gasps rippled outward. The arena became a court, banners witnesses to exposure. Guards seized him then, irons clicking like fate's verdict. Victor thrashed, curses swallowed by the din, dragged toward the outer gates where the magistrate waited. Elena turned to Goran, his massive form softening in the torch glow. You carried more than gold that night, she murmured. You carried justice. He nodded, the first true smile cracking his scarred face. No chains now, freedom earned in steel and sand, weeks blurred into restoration. Elena reclaimed the estates, the buried gold funding plowed fields and sturdy homes for the serfs Victor had starved. Goran stayed, not as servant but overseer, his strength rebuilding what greed tore down. No grand decrees from afar, no illusions of easy peace. Their evenings held quiet talks of hills and hidden paths, bonds forged in trial's fire. One dawn, as mist clung to the Carpathians, Elena stood on the balcony overlooking verdant lands. Goran joined her, silent sentinel. Victor faced his reckoning in a distant hall, exile perhaps or worse, stripped of title and coin. The Countess placed a hand on Goran's arm, feeling the steady pulse beneath old scars. We survived the arrows, she said softly. Now we thrive. The sun crested, bathing the valley in gold. Past shadows receded, replaced by paths chosen, hard-won. Elena smiled. The weight of legacy lightened, her world reclaimed not by fate's whim, but unyielding will. If this story of cunning survival kept you on the edge, smash that like button, subscribe for more cinematic tales, share it wide, and comment below. What twist shocked you most? Your engagement turns whispers into legends.